Yo, what's up, guys? Paulie Malignaggi here for Paulie TV. And today, I'm going to be breaking down some stuff about my post-fight interview in my first Juan Diaz fight back in August 2009. I get a lot of questions to this day about that fight, about the rant I went on. I had no plans to, really end up making that epic rant that to this day a lot of people talk about, a lot of you guys still bring up. Now looking back at it, I'm glad I was railing against it. It's kind of my style. Like, if I don't agree with something, I don't keep my mouth shut. It's the New Yorker in me. It's the Sicilian in me. But in that moment especially, it was, I'm going to go into the backstory of how we got there, how we got in that position, and what made me lose my mind. So this is August 2009, right? So I had lost to Ricky Hatton in November of 2008. And it was a fight where I didn't look good. Personally speaking, I don't think I looked good at all in any of my 2008 fights. I think, Buddy McGirt is a good trainer, but I really feel, looking back now, you probably have to be a puncher to have success with Buddy. He's got a very particular style that he trains you with, and I noticed that a lot of the guys who have had success with Buddy have been punchers. Guys who were not punchers weren't able to be as successful with him. A byproduct of the way he sets you in a stance doesn't obliterate your movement, but it certainly makes it a lot harder to be a moving target. But he had a certain style, and I believe it does work for punchers. Guys like Arturo Gatti are a testament to that. Sergey Kovalev, even more recently, Antonio Tarver, and so on and so forth. I think Buddy was a good trainer, and the fact that he had Trainer of the Year accolades is proof of that. But I just think stylistically, it wasn't the right fit for me, and we were trying to make it fit. Arturo Gatti had been my favorite fighter, so I had kind of a love attraction for having the same trainer as my favorite fighter had. And it didn't fit, and we were trying to kind of make it work. But I at first, we had some success. But as the style kind of blended more into my style, it started to take away from my natural attributes. And by the time we get into 2008, which is now a full year that I've been with Buddy, it was sort of starting to slip away from me. And you can kind of tell in my performances in all of 2008. Very, very lackluster, performances. I was getting hit more than I was ever getting hit before in my career. I was kind of confused. There was people saying to me, maybe you're just shot from the Cotto fight. That Cotto fight that you had was such a war that, maybe it changed you. And I didn't want to believe that, because I was like, yeah, I'm still young, and it didn't feel right. But, I was in the gym working, and, every day we were working, and, it was and Buddy makes it fun in the gym. He cracks jokes and whatnot, but really the results weren't getting there. We were holding on to the title by the skin of my teeth. I mean, we had a majority decision win over Herman and Goujo in January 2008, and then we had a split decision win against Lovemore and Doe in the rematch, where I had if any of you were watching at that time, I had the hair issues with the long Jamaican braids. I tried, my genius head decided to attempt to use, and so I broke my hand in that fight. So after that Lovemore and Doe fight, I was considering possibly making a change, but I'm thinking to myself, with the Hatton fight coming up, we've done the work with Buddy. It wouldn't be right to, take away this payday. Plus, I broke my hand in the Endo rematch. I had the hair issue. So I thought to myself, you know what? This is going to, maybe it's just that. I'll get up for the Hatton fight, and we'll be okay. But in the Hatton fight, I just looked so bad. I mean, I couldn't get off shots. I wasn't sharp at all, even though we trained really hard. I mean, we just wasn't getting sharp, And after the fight, I realized, okay, I've got to, sort of go back to what I used to do. And I made some changes in my team. And I kind of just revamped myself. And I just decided, you know what, let me listen to myself and let me go with somebody that I think blends with my natural attributes, my natural style. And I went with Sharif Yunin, who at the time wasn't very well known, but I knew him from Gleason's gym in New York. He had worked with guys like Ian Gardner. He has his son, Junior Yunin, who right now is actually an undefeated pro prospect. If you guys want to look him up, Junior Union. But at the time, Junior was a kid, but I knew Sharif had a razzmatazz, sort of pizzazz style of training, and worked well with speedy fighters. So I just went with that. I went with that on my own accord, on my own head. Some people were like, well, nobody knows who this trainer is. You just came from a former trainer of the year. And I was saying, well, because I just came from a former trainer of the year and it didn't work for me, I now know not to listen to opinions, And so I went with Sharif and we started working back on that speed style, that, the things that I did well naturally, just kind of, going back over them in the gym and then kind of starting to create and build on top of that. We had one comeback win, a small win, 8 rounds off on local TV. It was off of national TV. So you got to understand where my head is at now. I've just main evented in the MGM Grand in November of 2008, where, it was full of fans. It was one of the fights that was most anticipated in all of 2008. Ricky Hatton was the Ring Magazine champion, and I was the #1 ranked fighter in the Ring Magazine ratings underneath him at 140 pounds. And I had just had, the IBF title, which I vacated right before the fight because they wouldn't okay me to fight against Hatton. They wanted me to fight Ngujo in a rematch. So, it was a big moment for me. I remember going into the MGM Grand and, the casino was full of pictures of me. At the check-in, the keys. I still have some of the keys that had my picture with Hatton. The blackjack tables had my face on them and whatnot. It was really cool. It was a cool feeling, But the week just wasn't it. The fight just wasn't it. And at that point, I even had some of my close people to me saying, you should retire, man. You've never been the same since the Cotto fight. But I was the same, though, because I had won the first Endo fight in dominant fashion when it was still a lot of me left in my style. Buddy did help. There was just enough balance there with Buddy's style and my style that I felt like that first Endo fight was the perfect combination, It just then I started to lose more and more of myself by the time we got into 08, training under this sort of system, I mean, again, not a knock on Buddy. Clearly, you've seen him have a lot of success with big punchers, trainer of the year accolades with Arturo Gatti and Antonio Tarver. I mean, big awards, So it was more so just the styles didn't blend. And sometimes that happens, Sometimes that happens, and not just in boxing. Sometimes that happens in other sports as well, So going back to it, we're in 2009. We're in early 2009, and I win this comeback fight. Doesn't really. I remember I won it on the Jermaine Taylor Carl Froch undercard, though, which was a really good fight. If anybody remembers Jermaine Taylor versus Carl Froch, that was a good fight. Froch got a come from behind knockout win in round 12. And now we get this comeback win, and we're looking to get a big fight. We're looking to get a big fight. But, of course, the networks aren't really crazy about me. I just looked terrible in the Hatton fight. I came back in a small 8-round win. I'm kind of salivating to get back in the big time. I just wanted my chance because I was starting to feel like myself again in the gym. And we've had it after having spent a few months with a speed-based trainer, with a speed-style trainer in Sharif Union. So I just wanted to get back in there and show people like, yo, what you saw in the Hatton fight was not me. What you saw in 08, that was not me. You're going to see what I'm capable of, And we were having trouble solidifying dates. I was with DeBell Entertainment at the time, who didn't really have any TV dates. So we were kind of at the mercy of trying to become an opponent for somebody whose promoter could acquire a TV date, In the meantime, one of the positives was during this time was when I got the little Mac commercial offer. And because I was kind of sitting around with nothing to do except train, I was able to do that little Mac commercial. You guys have probably seen it on another episode of Paulie TV where I discussed that. But in the meantime, I was consistently training, consistently applying my craft and going back to the speed base. And I got an offer for June 2009 to fight Mike Alvarado on the Kelly Pavlik versus Sergio Mora card. It was going to be in June 2009. I was going to be the B-side, of course. It was a top-ranked show. Alvarado was an undefeated up-and-coming guy, big puncher. Later on, obviously, you guys would find out, he'd become a world champion, and he had a great trilogy with Brandon Rios and all that. But at the time that they offered me this fight, Alvarado was just an up-and-coming guy who was very dangerous and was punching. And they wanted to put me on the Pavlik versus Mora undercard in Atlantic City. So for me, even though it was a top-ranked card and I would have come in as the opponent coming off of, a small win after looking really bad at all of the prior year, I felt pretty confident about my chances. I felt like stylistically my speed would have got the best of Alvarado. So I took the fight. That was what was going through my mind. And, we were kind of training for that. We were starting to get ready for that. But right around the time I took the fight, I also got offered to fight Juandiaz in Houston for more money on HBO in a main event. Pavlik versus Mora was going to be a pay-per-view, a top-ranked pay-per-view, and I was going to be part of the undercard. So, but I was going to be televised. It was less money I was going to be offered. I took the Alvarado fight because I felt like Atlantic City against a lesser-known opponent. But a guy who's still is building traction is probably a better route for me to go than risking getting robbed in Texas against a better opponent who is a tougher fight either way. I may not even beat him. So I thought to myself, I'm taking the Alvarado fight instead of the Diaz fight. That's what I did, and they offered me the Diaz fight for more money, but I turned it down. I didn't want to go to Houston. I was taking the Alvarado fight in Atlantic City on this Pavlik versus Mora undercard. When eventually what ended up happening is first Alvarado ended up pulling out of the fight. I think he got hurt, they told me, but later on I found out I think he had arrested actually. Mike was a little bit of a street kid, good fighter, but I had heard he had some issues outside of the ring. And so, that fight ended up imploding. But either way, even if that hadn't happened, Kelly Pavlik ended up pulling out of the main event with Mora because he got a staph infection. So the whole card imploded. So even if Alvarado hadn't pulled out of the fight, the whole card would have imploded because the main event fell through. So Alvarado pulling out of the fight earlier allowed me to go search back for the Diaz fight, which now was kind of the only thing on the table. Because again, I was with a promoter that didn't get any dates. So I needed to be an opponent for somebody in order to get my own date. So we negotiated the Diaz fight, and we made the Diaz fight. I remember thinking to myself and hoping and praying that we could get it outside of Houston. I even told my promoter, is there any way we can get this thing outside of Texas? Because I knew that the history Texas had. And by the way, Texas boxing fans, and I've worked as a commentator. I've been to Texas countless times. Some of the best boxing fans that are in the sport. There's a reason why boxing goes back to Texas constantly, despite the controversial decisions, because you've got some incredibly passionate fans there. So I can understand why fights keep going there regardless. But at the time, Texas had a little bit of a shady reputation for decisions. And the biggest one had been Pernell Whitaker getting the draw against Julio Cesar Chavez, in the decade before, which was a monster pay-per-view, and it was should have been a major upset. But they gave it a draw instead. So, there had been a couple of other situations. I don't remember if the Chavez versus Vera decision was before or after my fight with Juandiaz, but I can remember Chavez getting a gift against Brian Vera in their first fight, also in Texas, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., and so on and so forth. So, there was a little bit of a shady reputation, and Juan was really loved in Houston. Juan was a really big ticket seller, as you guys know. He was a former unified world lightweight champion. He came with a big reputation, and he was looking to move up in weight, but he didn't want to move up totally, so they made me do a catch weight, 138.5 pounds. And by this point, I had been at 140 pounds for 8 years. 7 years at the time. And it was not easy to make 140 pounds for me. They made 138.5 pounds, which some people might say, a pound and a half is nothing. But not when you don't have much to lose. I'm telling you, that pound and a half was like death to get it off me. I remember the night before the weigh-in, I barely slept. I was like constantly. I remember the night before the weigh-in, to give you guys some context here. The night before the weigh-in, I was so thirsty, and I still weighed about 139.5 pounds. And I remember thinking to myself, here's what I used to do the morning of my weigh-ins. I would just turn on the hot water in the hotel room, block all the air passages in the door, put a towel underneath the door, and I would put on layers with Albolene. All boxers know what Albolene opens up your pores. And put on a hat, put on headphones, and just literally like slow shadow box for like 30 minutes in the bathroom, and it would steam up, and I would usually lose that last pound. But usually, to make 140 pounds, I would go to sleep the night before like 143 pounds, and then wake up like 142 and a half and lose the last 2.5 pounds in the morning. Now I'm forced to go to sleep at about 139 and a half, 140 pounds, because if I go to sleep at 143, I won't be able to make the 138 and a half pound limit in time. So I've got to go to sleep a little bit lighter, which means now I'm super thirsty, which I would have already been thirsty at 143, but it's enough where I can sleep at least. At 139 and a half, 140, I cannot sleep. I'm just losing my mind. I'm closing my eyes and I'm thinking about rain. I'm thinking about waterfalls. I'm thinking about, like, your mind starts to play games with you, and I'm doing that. And what I convinced myself, I did this 2 times in the middle of the night. I convinced myself to go into the bathroom, do my shadow box routine with layers and hot water, lose some weight, just so I could drink a little bit and maybe go to sleep, and then in the morning I'd do it again because of what I drank back. But hopefully that drinking a little bit would be enough to suffice for me to get some sleep. It didn't do it the first time. I drank it back on. I couldn't drink another bottle, so I had to go back into the bathroom and do it again. I did it 2 times in the middle of the night and drank again. And the second time I was able to get a little bit of sleep. Then I woke up at like 7 a.m. and I went for a walk. I was just dying of thirst, And then I waited until, I think the weigh-in was in the afternoon. And I waited until, a couple hours before the weigh-in, and I did it again. And that one was the one where I wasn't going to drink anymore, because until I stepped on the scale, So I did that. So, mind you, the whole week leading into it, I was aggravated. I had talked about the politics, and a lot of them, I was hoping to talk about the politics of Texas, not because I was planning on losing. I was talking about the politics of Texas. That way the media would put pressure on the commission to make sure that I don't get robbed, because there was a history of decisions not going people's way when they go to Texas. I wasn't trying to prepare for it to happen. I was trying to make the media jump on it and basically put so much pressure on the commission that the head commissioner would be able to say, yo, listen, we can't really, we make sure whoever judges this fight that they do the right thing, because the media is really onto us. Instead, the media, in their normal way, morons, stupid, ignorant, I could say a lot of other words, but I might get in trouble for it, started to write that Paulie was making excuses even before the fight happens, because they're looking at me as the Ricky Hatton version of me, the Ricky Hatton fight version of me, and that guy is not going to go into Texas and beat Juandiaz, because Juandiaz was a punching machine. He punched a lot. He was coming off of a loss himself, having lost to Juan Manuel Marquez in a really, really good fight where he had Marquez hurt, and then Marquez came back and knocked him out. So they were just looking to get him back in the win column against a respectable name opponent, but an opponent that they thought he'd beat. And a guy who, like myself, former world champion, who looked like he was kind of shot in his last his last big fight in the whole prior year before, kind of fit the bill. So that's why they just brought me to Texas as sort of a sacrificial lamb to get Juan back in the win column. And so I remember, talking about this because, I knew people were looking at me like I'm the same guy that I was in 2008. But I knew the change in trainer had got me back to a lot of the things I did well. Back to my own comfortable style. And I knew I had something for Juan when the bell rang. I knew it was going to be a fight. Listen, I would never have thought, Juan was going to be an easy fight. I knew the kind of, they called him the baby bull for a reason. He was intense. He had stoppage wins over guys like Acelino Freitas, Julio Diaz. I think he'd beaten Michael Katsidis. He'd beaten a lot of champions, So I wasn't, in denial about the fact that the fight was going to be tough, but I was positive about the fact that I would be ready for this fight, and my style would allow me to be able to handle whatever Juan was bringing. But I did expect it to be tough, obviously. Nonetheless, the media didn't jump on any of this at all. They basically started to say that I was making excuses for the upcoming result. That I was going to get beat and I was making excuses. I believe I was like a 4-1 underdog. Matter of fact, one of my friends actually bet me. I remember, so he was pissed. And when the result came, one of my friends bet like $7-8 grand. I remember on me. I had 4-1. He would have got a return of 28 to 35,000. You know what I'm saying? So I was a 4-1 underdog. And of course, the night before in the weigh-in, I did that. Also, earlier in the week, what's funny about it, earlier in the week, the first day I got there, we were working pads in the gym, and we're working pads, and my trainer, I accidentally dip. You bob when you should have weaved, or whatever, you zig when you should have zagged, whatever the saying is. I dipped, and my trainer, I think, was coming around. I was supposed to go underneath, and instead I kind of bobbed my head over, and I ran into his elbow, and I cut my left eye. I had a cut the week of the fight, and I'm like, there's no way after this miserable training camp that I'm gonna go through this and pull out of this fight. So we bought what is that called at the pharmacy? New glue or something, or something glue. It's like a fake liquid. It kind of seals the wound. And then we put cover up makeup on it for the press conference and then for the weigh-in. But we knew it was going to open up. We knew as soon as you touch this thing, it's going to open up. But whatever. I had fought with cuts before. I was fine with fighting with cuts. And so we we have the weigh-in. I make the weight, and I'm happy. I get a good night's rest because the night before I hadn't rested. I get a good night's rest, and I wake up the day of the fight feeling pretty good, you know? Now I've gotten to eat. I've gotten to hydrate myself a little bit, and you know, I feel pretty good going into the fight, you know? I remember it was a rough crowd. I remember being in the dressing room, and and there was a couple of stabbings in the crowd. And I remember the security guard or one of the commission guys came in and like told us, like the third time that the stabbing happened, the guy comes in, he's like, man, they just took out a guy, he got stabbed in the crowd or something. And me and my best friend Peter Carr, as you guys might know, we're looking at each other like, bro, how are these people fighting? Aren't they all here for the same guy? I mean, aren't they, aren't they here for, you're all here for it's not like anybody's getting stabbed on my side. Nobody's here for me, you're all here for cheering for the same guy. So it was funny because I'm thinking like, what a rough crowd this is going to be, But I had already dealt with rough. The Miguel Cotto crowd in Madison Square Garden in New York really was a huge experience factor for me that I always took with me in future fights. That was really one of the roughest crowds, if not the roughest crowd I ever fought in front of, So although Houston was rough on me, I was already mentally stable and ready for it because I'd been through certain experiences already. So I remember the walkout. I walked out. Arturo Gatti had just passed away, who had been my favorite fighter. So I walked out to Thunderstruck by AC/DC, which was always a song Arturo used to walk out to. And that's it. Then, the first round starts and we it's a fast-paced first round. I was ready. Juan was ready. I got cut in the first round, obviously, but as I'm telling you now, that was already the cut that I had gotten opened up earlier in the week, So it wasn't like a surprise or a shock to me that I would get cut. But fortunately for me, in the second round, I opened up a cut on Juan's eye as well with a counter uppercut. He went to my body. I caught it and shot up with an uppercut. I think they showed the replay on the broadcast, if I'm not mistaken, and I cut him back. And then, kind of the fight went on. Listen, I do think the fight was competitive. I just don't think that. It wasn't like a one-sided fight where you say like, where do they have no business robbing me? I just felt like it wasn't a tough fight to get to a final scorecard where Paulie malignaggi wins the fight. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, I felt it was an entertaining fight. It was a good fight. It was a good clash of styles. And I felt like everybody enjoyed it, But I'm at a point now where at the time in my career, I'm with a promoter who gets no TV dates, no, not a knock on Bell Entertainment, but that's just the way it was, I'm not gonna. I know it's not nice to speak facts sometimes nowadays, but that was just the fact and the way it was. The only way I was getting fights on major TV networks were if I was the opponent, if I was the B side. So in order to even be the B side, you need to at least be the B-side for these kind of big fights, you need to at least hold some kind of resume, some kind of respectable resume where the network will say, okay, that we can accept this opponent for the guy that we're trying to keep moving. In this fight, it was Juandiaz, who they were trying to get back in the win column after a good competitive loss to Juan Manuel Marquez. The fight ends. I believe I've won the fight, but I don't hold my breath on the decision. I remember my friend who'd bet the money on me is also super psyched because he thinks he's won about $30,000, so he's really super psyched, just my team, we're happy, it was a good performance, and of course we get the decision and it doesn't go my way. I remember in the post-fight interview I went after Raul Caiz. He actually had a close scorecard, I don't know why. I think it was maybe because he was the last scorecard that was read. That I probably just stuck out at him. I should have really railed against Gail Van Hoy, who was absolutely sticking it to me on purpose for basically calling out the corruption that was in Texas, because he had it 10-2 for Juandiaz, which was insane, insane. But you do tend to see this, You saw Adelaide Bird do that with the Canelo versus Golovkin one fight in Vegas. Years later, it happened to me again with Tom Schreck in New York when he had it 117-111 for Adrian Broner in a fight that I felt I won and a lot of people felt I won. Close fight though, but 117-111. I don't know when you get these kind of scorecards. Gail Van Hoy had it 118-110 for Juandiaz, and that was it. I think Donald Sutherland was the other judge. But I think he had an 8-4 for Juan as well, So anyway, either way, I end up losing a unanimous decision, in true Texas style. And now what's going through my mind now is this, because people are like, oh, did you plan on that? I didn't plan on that. But here's what's going through my mind. In that moment, I realized, how do I get back on TV? And TV is the way I'm going to make my money. You know, if I don't fight on TV, I get these small little purses, you know, that are useless. And I had just done that in the fight before this to get back on the win column, just so I could be regurgitated back onto a big platform like HBO at that time, you know? And by losing again, I was going to have to get knocked down all the way to the bottom rung again, especially now that I was my second loss in 3 fights. You know, you're wrecking my record. You're making me look like I'm on a bad streak. Meantime, I'm actually improving again. You know, it was a fight where I'm looking like myself again, you know? So I was so pissed off. I was so pissed off because it was frustration and all this other stuff. So when I came to the post-fight interview, I just thought to myself, I got nothing to lose. What are they going to do? Not put me back on TV? They're not going to put me back on TV anyway. So what's the point? You know, like, so, because, you know, I've lost 2 out of 3 fights and major TV's not going to buy me anyway, you know? And so I said, I got nothing to lose, man. I'm just going to give it to them the way I see it. And I'm going to call it like I see it. And I'm just going to let them all have it. I remember Max Kellerman, you know, asking the questions. He tried to play his role, but he was trying to play it neutral. So yeah, we actually have the interview here. Max first had interviewed Juan because Juan won the fight, obviously. And, you know, and this was nothing personal with Juan. I think to this day, you know, I have an incredible respect for Juan Diaz. He's one of those good guys in boxing. And also, he got out of boxing with his faculties intact, have success post-boxing. I hear many good things that he's doing. And he did it right, man. He just disappeared, got out of it, and he's doing well. So, you know, props to Juan Diaz, who, you know, I shared the ring with on 2 occasions. But let's check out my post-fight interview.
Time you fight, no matter who you're fighting, Juan. Thanks a lot. Congratulations. Paulie, you said the deck was stacked.
So here, I'm hearing the boos already. So I'm agitated as it is. Now I'm hearing the boos, and I'm like, man, I just got railroaded here, and the crowd is mad at me. Can you imagine? Like, I'm like, the injustice I'm feeling here. So as Max is asking the question, the boos are starting to proliferate, and my blood is boiling, and here we go.
Against you, it came as no great surprise that you were on the short end of the decision. Give us your thoughts.
Hey, man, first of all, how'd you guys score it?
Ringside, Harold Letterman had it 7 rounds to 5. I thought that was about right, but I thought it was competitive.
7-5 me, right?
Yes, Harold did have that.
And there you go. There you go. Like, Max is trying to skate away from the controversy. Like, I feel like he does this a lot. Like, he first waits to see which way the wind is blowing. And then, like, when it's safe, he just kind of joins the direction of the wind. Like, I felt like right there, he could have easily just told me, like, yeah, we all felt like you won the fight and all that other stuff, which is what they were saying. When I went back and looked at the broadcast, that's what they were saying anyway. You know what I'm saying? So I don't understand why he just couldn't say it that way in the post-fight interview. But either way, you know, nothing against him in that. But in that moment, I remember being a little ticked off that he wasn't more. He didn't say it with more bass in his voice. Basically, he didn't like put it out there that yes, you did win this fight, and it's not fair. You know. So of course, I took it upon myself to say it instead. And here we go.
Thank you, man. At least some people got the score right. Listen, I don't know why Houston is booing me. You guys are a great fight town, man. I didn't have nothing wrong, nothing against Houston, man.
And I didn't have anything against Houston. Again, I think Texas boxing fans, there's a reason boxing keeps going back to Texas despite some shady decisions, and it's because the fans are some of the best fans in the sport. So, you know, I enjoyed, whether I'm getting booed or I'm getting cheered, I always loved passionate, vociferous, vocal crowds, you know, and this fight had that as well. You know, I can remember, like, you know, there was you know, the decibel levels rising up and down during the fight. You know, they were real passionate during the whole fight. And obviously, when you give them a good fight, they're going to get more into it. So this was actually a fun atmosphere to fight in, regardless of the fact that, you know, the whole arena wanted me to lose. So I was giving them their props, but they did not want to hear it. They just booed louder.
It's a great fight town. You guys were a loud crowd. It ain't nothing against you guys, man, but I had to deal with a lot of politics, man. That was ridiculous. I knew I was going to have to deal with this. You know, you got guys like Raul Kais. That's Golden Boy's gopher. I said it before, and he was. And
there again, I mean, I felt like I probably just went for Raul Kais because he was the last scorecard read. But honestly, I mean, his scorecard was not the one I should have been complaining about. I mean, Gail Van Hoy was... Gail Van Hoy did it on purpose. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I'm not even going to go into more of it because he's since passed away. He's an older guy, so I'm not going to go into it. But yeah, that was done to me on purpose. Railroad job by Gail Van Hoy.
They had the closest scorecard, man. I'm telling you, this state never gives a fair shake to anybody coming to this state to fight hometown fighters. It never happens. All the way back to Whitaker Chavez. It never.
And you see, Max takes away the microphone from me, so you don't hear me keep talking. But I said all the way back to Whitaker Chavez. I actually mentioned the Whitaker Chavez fight there, but the mic is not on my face, so you don't actually get to hear it. But if you listen closely when as he pulls back the mic, I'm saying all the way back to Pernell Whitaker versus Julio Cesar Chavez.
Putting the decision aside, again, that comes as no great shock that a Malignaggi,
but it's not right.
That a Malignaggi Diaz fight goes the distance, that it's a fun fight to watch and competitive, and that Malignaggi doesn't get the decision in Texas against Diaz. Putting that aside for a moment, assess the fight. What do you think about the fight itself?
I thought I edged it out. I thought I outboxed him. But man, Juan is a great warrior. I expected that from Juan, though. I knew he was going to come to fight. I knew he was going to come to throw down. I knew he was going to throw punches. The ring was small, so I couldn't always move because he was going to get to me, you know. So I had to break it up between smothering him and moving. But Juan showed his heart, man. He came to try to win every round.
So with the ring being small, this is one of the benefits you get when you're the A side. You get to choose these little things like this. You know, I was fighting on a Golden Boy show against a Golden Boy fighter. And so basically I have no say. It's one of the tough parts about, you know, being with a team that doesn't get the TV dates. You don't get to decide certain things, you know. Even with Miguel Cotto, I felt like the ring was very small, and he's a phenomenal fighter. So try to fight that guy with that kind of punching power in a small ring in Madison Square Garden. In this situation, I don't think it was quite as small as the ring in the Garden the night I fought Cotto, but it was, I believe, an 18 by 18 ring, which is, you know, circumstantially still small. You know, the average will usually be about 20 by 20. I think Vegas rules, Nevada rules are 20 by 20 all the time. But in other states, you're allowed to negotiate in other states, even other countries, you're allowed to negotiate the ring size if you're in the position where you can enforce that kind of power. And obviously, me being the opponent, I didn't have a choice in the ring size. So the ring was a little bit smaller. So that's why I was discussing my methodology to the way I was fighting Juan, because Juan was very aggressive, always was.
At the end, we were both trying our hardest with our own styles. I was backing up boxing. He was trying to bring it. We were both going for our strengths to pull out the last rounds, and I think we both needed. We knew them. We both knew we needed them. And I thought I pulled them out. I thought I outboxed the aggressor in the last rounds.
Paulie, assuming you don't get a rematch for a second.
You know I ain't getting a rematch, man. This is boxing. Boxing is full of shit, man. I used to love this sport. I used to love this sport, man. I cannot stand doing this. The only reason I do this is because it gives me a good payday. Boxing is full of shit.
Paulie, assuming...
And this is, you know, one of the things that I think end up getting a lot of fighters. You know, the passion starts to kind of wear off of you for, you know, what once you just lived for this sport. I think anybody that becomes a championship level, elite level fighter, even guys that don't, honestly, I think when you first come into the gym, you do have dreams and hopes and you know, desires to change your life, to, you know, become somebody. You know, a lot of us guys, us boxers, are people that, you know, society, you know, we're kind of the rejects of society, and you know, society stopped believing in us, you know, and so we literally get a chance to fight our way into recognition in society, and for society not only to respect us, but to not only to notice us, but also to respect us and to even praise us, you know. So that's the desire and passion that you kind of come into boxing with, and you love it. You don't mind the hard work. You actually live for it. You live for the grind, you know. But there comes a point, I think, in a lot of fighters' careers, and you look at a lot of fighters that are late in their careers, you know, they stop loving it for that reason, and this was probably the night. This, and you know, even the way the Hatton fight turned out, you know, the 9 months between the Hatton situation and that fight and now this one, it kind of just took a lot of the love I had, the passion I had for the sport out of me. I still, though, you know, still a lot of desire. Plus, they still paid me pretty well. I knew I could still make money and make a living. So I knew it wasn't going to be worth it to just stop fighting, despite any frustrations. But it was just, I just felt like I was better than I was being treated, and it was going to be a hard road back in my mind after not getting this decision. So this was me venting my frustrations in that way.
You don't get the rematch. You here have reestablished yourself on a world-class level. What would you want next?
Listen, anything that comes my way. I mean, I'm just an opponent after losing the fight. One can go call out the winner of Marquez and Mayweather, or the winner of another big fight.
Marquez and Mayweather were fighting in the next month. This fight was on August 22nd, 2009. Marquez and Mayweather ended up fighting on Mexican Independence Weekend, which is usually about mid-September, so a few weeks after this. And there was talk about, the winners fighting one another and all this other stuff. My name was, several times in my career, was mentioned alongside Pacquiao and Mayweather, but, life is all timing. It just didn't happen. So who knows? Maybe if I would have got this decision, I would have got a Mayweather fight. Who knows, at the time. But I didn't get this decision, and as it was, Juan didn't look good enough in getting the decision to then get the Mayweather fight in retrospect. And obviously, we'll continue the interview, and we'll go into what happened after the fight.
I don't have that luxury because I got robbed, so I'm on the short end of the stick. So I got to sit back and hope I get used as an opponent in somebody's hometown again. This is the bullshit I got to go through. I'm fighting for
Paulie, congratulations on a tremendous performance.
You see at the end when I say I'm fighting only for money, because at that point I'm so frustrated. I got no love for the sport that I'm just like, all the reason I'm doing this is because, where else am I going to make this kind of money? What else am I going to do to make this kind of money? So I might as well just do it because I have this talent that I can make money. But that's the only reason I'm going to do it. I don't care for the sport anymore. Really, it's just like, it's more like you're hurt, and you just, you don't want to admit it. So you just making like you don't care. But in reality, this boxing had been a big part of my life. I was frustrated with the way I was being treated, especially on this particular night.
It's an excellent fight. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Thank you, Juan. Houston, congratulations. You guys are a great fight town. Juandiaz the warrior. You guys got a great hometown warrior. But I won this fight.
And that was it. We did that post-fight interview, and we didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't realize it was going to make a splash, honestly. I didn't think about that. I think text messaging was out at that time, but I was late to text messaging, so I wasn't text messaging with anyone. I was getting phone calls later in the night, voicemails. You made a big splash. That interview, people are talking, all this other stuff. And I think maybe Twitter was out. Right? Was it Twitter, or maybe it was MySpace at the time? Who knows? But people were talking. People were talking either way, and it made a splash. And I remember that was a Saturday night. And I remember Monday morning, there was the AOL homepage, which was like, at the time, AOL was like a big deal. I think it was also on the Yahoo homepage. The homepage, not just the sports page, the homepage. And there was a headline saying, "Boxer goes crazy," or something. And that was the article of me from my Saturday night interview a couple of nights before. So this made a big splash that it crossed over into some of the mainstream news. And that was kind of the push I needed, because I didn't want to be one of those guys that, you get robbed. And I've seen this happen to some guys. They get robbed and they just kind of be like, and they will kind of just quietly do their post-fight interview like, yeah, the fans really know who won the fight, and this is just not right. But the fans know. No, the fans might know, but they're not gonna really have an effect unless you start kicking at people. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I did. I said, no, this is not one of those things where the fans know. I'm gonna let myself be heard. And in making myself be heard, it ended up getting picked up, it ended up becoming a big story. And it ended up, kind of putting pressure on Ross Greenberg at HBO, who was running HBO Sports at the time, and Kerry Davis. And I remember, they ended up putting Golden Boy in a position where they said, we cannot buy another Juandiaz fight unless it's against Paulie malignaggi, So they basically, and obviously Juan wants to fight on HBO because he's got to make, that's where you're going to make your big paydays. Obviously, I want to be on HBO, but the only way, now I've got to try to force the rematch. Otherwise, I'm not getting on HBO because my promoter has no dates, So I got to go after his date. I got to go after, making sure I get him. And sure enough, the HBO was gracious enough to force the rematch, and they gave me the rematch. I made enough of a splash. I think people, the fan base also, the fans did, end up pushing for it because I made such a big stink about it. I think the fans ended up pushing for it as well. So that helped me. And sure enough, I got the rematch on December the 11th of the same year, 2009. Funny thing about it is Arturo Gatti and Ivan Robinson fought two fights in 1998. And it was the exact same 2 dates. I know this because I'm such a big Arturo Gatti fan. Arturo Gatti fought Ivan Robinson August 22nd, 1998 and December 11th, 1998, the rematch. Me and Juandiaz did the same exact thing on both dates. August 22nd, I guess the calendar year ended up with the dates aligning the same way. August 22nd, 2009 and December 11th, 2009. I got the decision. I remember I was offered to go back to Houston for more money. You know, they offered me more money for the rematch, but they said, we'll give you even more money if you go back to Houston. No way, man. I'm going to beat him, and then I'm going to get more money after that, on the flip side of that, you know? And that's what I did. You know, I was like, you know, don't get me wrong. They made you think about it, though, bro. I mean, because you're like, oh, man. Because, again, I don't know what dates I'm going to be able to get, you know, because my promoter didn't have dates, you know, at the mercy of getting a fight against somebody else's fighter with the promoter had dates, you know. So I did that. We ended up winning the rematch, and it got me the Amir Khan fight, which didn't end up going too well for me. So it was all an up and down career. That's basically, my career was a roller coaster of sorts. But this is basically a breakdown of my post-fight interview for my Juandiaz fight the first time. Sometimes people don't really know the backstories of everything, so I'm happy to break it down for you because I get a lot of questions on this. You know, shout out to Juandiaz, who was a great champion in his own right, and a successful human being and a good human being in his own right. Shout out to HBO, you know, for giving me that rematch, forcing that rematch at the time. Shout out to maxkellerman. Even though in the moment I was unhappy with him, you know, he did a great job over there. And you know what? Shout out to the Texas Commission too. Sometimes, you know, you guys do a little bit shady stuff, but you know, sometimes you guys are cool as well, you know. And shout out to the Texas boxing fans, Houston and Texas boxing fans. There's a reason why Texas always has big time boxing to this day. They have some of the best fans in the world, regardless of the fact that you might be risking if you go fight there against one of their guys. To like, subscribe, tune in for all my content. I hope you guys like this video.